SPRLiveFM is your taste of grace in cyberspace.
The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Whether you're at your desk at work or at home lying in your bed, the gospel is all yours, now streaming on the World Wide Web.
Thank you for tuning in to Rebuilding the Black Family with Pastor Carl Lewis and myself, Clement Humphrey. Rebuilding the Black Family is dedicated to discussing principles essential to building strong, productive, and successful families. Please join the conversation by liking, following, and sharing us from our Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/Foundation for Life Church and facebook.com/SPRLiveFM. Now, let's join Pastor Carl and me, Clement Humphrey.
Whether you're at your desk at work or at home lying in your bed, the gospel is all yours, now streaming on the World Wide Web.
Peggy, good afternoon. Was that me? Oh, that's me. I think that's me. I apologize. Yeah, that's me. Well, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How you been?
I'm doing well.
By this time, it's a long day for you, right?
Very long day. Very long day.
You started the early
shift, and then you gather here for the
early
afternoon.
afternoon.
Whew.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
But you know what, though?
You're loving it, huh?
I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. Just today, I was thinking about the fact of doing the things that you love doing. So often we tell our children to, we want them to do this, we want them to do that, and we never allow them to go into the areas that they enjoy the most. And you enjoy yourself more in what you love doing.
Yeah.
Even if you're making $3 an hour. You wouldn't go to work tired or frustrated. You go to work with enjoyment. Because you know what? If I could flip it over to this way, I've seen pastors who work for absolutely nothing but just enjoy serving the Lord in the field that they're in, and therefore the finances that they get don't compensate for the stress that they go through, but yet they enjoy what they do. They enjoy serving the Lord in whatever capacity areas they're in. So it's good to be here, and I could.
Well, let me say this too, though, is that the Bible does say a man's gift will make room for bringing before great people. So the thing is this: if you start somewhere, and like you're saying, according to your gifting and passion, and so you might start out, let's say you set at the minimum wage, but you won't stay there.
Correct.
Because God says a gift will make room and bring you before. So you'll be increased before the right people who will value the gift and ability that you have. And so, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you tuning in to Rebuilding the Black Family. And, we're in this Christmas season.
Yeah.
And it's a good time of the year, a special time of the year. And, of course, just to qualify, I tell this people at our congregation, we know that Jesus was not born at this time of the year. We realize that. But the fact is we are celebrating. We choose to use this time to celebrate the birth of Jesus because we know he was born.
Right.
So we just set aside this specific time. We'll work with the calendar. We'll work with, people who've set that holiday. Right. We're fine. We can worship Jesus.
What was Christmas like for you growing up?
For me growing up? Well,
as a little boy. As a little boy.
What was it like?
Yeah.
Well, I think of some of the traditions, when you said that, I thought of bun and cheese.
Well, hey, that's what you remember. That's fine, right?
You remember, family coming together for special times. You remember big dinners. We remember going to a service on,
early morning
service. There were also, at church, there was also gifts. They used to give gifts to the children. It was a good time, though. It was a very, very good time. I have very good memories. It's very positive.
Was your dad a pastor?
No.
Okay. I remember growing up in Christmas time, and Christmas, I don't know what was wrong with me growing up. Christmas was supposed to be a time of, as they say, it relates to Christ. But to me, I never pictured that. For me, it was always, I'm going to get me a lot of gifts, or at least we used to have this thing, I think some of the West Indian islands have this thing called masquerade. People going down the street beating the drums. There's a sorrel, the cooking, the cleaning, the scraping of the furniture, literally stripping the house down and redoing it with the blinds. And I used to knit a lot too. Knit, yeah, the
knit
crochet,
one per one?
crochet, the crochet and things like that. I did that a lot. Man, are you kidding me? My mama had me doing all them kind of stuff, and then you had to clean the chairs and polish and redecorate. So we used to make these we used to call them Palatine twine. I don't know what's the appropriate name for it, but I know the Guyanese terminology is Palatine twine. And we made these flowers out of them. I made a lot of flowers.
All of this was done at Christmas.
Christmas, yeah. You do you start before, right? You do the knitting. You do the little. My mom used to tell me what to do: the long stitch and short stitch, and just the drop stitch. And man, I did all that kind of stuff.
I'm a master of the crochet. Huh?
Interesting enough, my eldest child, I see her doing that a lot now. She learned to do the actual knitting with the 2 needles. I never got a chance to learn how to do that, but she does that too. But I did the crocheting stuff, right? So I see her doing that the other day. I'm like, oh my goodness, I remember I used to do that.
Now the time I see, I'm going to think knit one, purl one. Whatever. I just remember that because my sisters used to do that.
Oh, really? I never did get the knit. Well, you rightfully so. The knitting is we call everything knitting, but everything we used to call one name, right? But it's really crocheting. And I did that for a long time. I used to do, there's a thing you used to put the nails in a pattern and then you rethread them.
Gotcha.
I did that too. We used to do all that for Christmas time, then of course the repainting.
But this is saying, everything you're saying though, everyone has their own specific traditions, if you will.
Correct.
That's what I hear that. So we have our traditions. Now what we want to do this afternoon is to do a couple things. The saying, kill two birds with one stone. We've heard in the media quite a bit recently about the exposing of men in positions of authority who've in different cases, some of them alleged, some of them proven, as far as sexual assault, sexual abuse, and different things like that. And so, because we talk about rebuilding the black family, one of the things that's really important to rebuilding the black family in the way God wants it to be, and hence to have really strong families, successful families, fruitful, productive families, is so that it's so we can continue to perpetuate a very good legacy to our children, is how we see women.
Right.
Is how we see women. And so if we would, and I understand, if we can just park, I know that men have also been the victims of different negative scenarios, and some of men, you might be right now in a position where you're in a very challenging situation with your spouse, or you've had some very negative experiences with women. I understand that that's part of it. But if we can just park that, if you will, today, and just focus a little bit on the way we see women. Because that's the big thing. It's our vision of women, how we see them. And the thing, when I hear of the different things, part of the narrative where I think I have a hard time listening to, I've listened to different reports and different people in media, is I was listening to a secular station recently. It's more of a right-wing media. And I heard one of the persons say, well, a couple of people said this. I heard them saying, well, there's a rape culture that all men, they made it sound as if all men are a party to. And so I've got to completely deny that and defy that. We just can't accept that. You just can't go that far with it, because like I heard a news person journalist say, well, I've never raped anyone. I've never, and so this other woman, and obviously she might have had challenges because she might have not have overcome whatever negative she's experienced, but she was giving that impression that, well, you're all a part of this. You're all the reason why this has happened and it's happening to women. Mm-hmm. And I think if women go too far that side, if you're not, then they can lessen the true message.
Correct.
So let's focus a bit, though, is this, on this, we could say the sad state of affairs that's happened, with women, and the terrible experiences many of them have had to go through and have been victimized, particularly by men in power. But let me say this, a lot of that is not new. Mm-hmm. A lot of time people will say, well, this is new. This has been going on, for a very long time. And so the thing is this, in the black community, that's what we're focusing on, is this. We need to remember, how do we see black women? That's what I want to focus on. How do we see our women? And that starts very early. What's our vision of women? What's our vision of those ladies that will become, that are not just girls, but will become the mothers of our children, the wives to men. And so this is really important that we address this issue, because it's a critical component of rebuilding or restoring the black family to what God's intention is, to be very productive, successful, and that will perpetuate the right legacy for generations to come. And so I said we're going to kill two birds with one stone. We can understand the kind of value we're supposed to have of women because we see it in the creation of the original man and woman, Adam and Eve. And so, just for review, in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, I can also refer to why Jesus had to be born a baby. He had to take on human flesh to come as a man who was created in the image of God, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And the thing is, it says God made Eve, said male and female, I should say. He made male and female. Remember that. Man is the species of man. So, but it comes in two species. So the species of man, comes into two sexes, male and female. So there's the distinctive male and the distinctive female. And so women are very, very important. So right from the beginning, if we understand Scripture correctly, God never made women to be under men. That's really important, because females, like males, were created in the image of God, spirit, soul, and body. So it's really important. You're created in the image of God, and if they're created in the image of God, that means they have the same value as man. And so it's very, very important, if we're going to rectify this problem, if we're going to make sure that we see women correctly, we need to see that their creation was like that of man, created in the image of God. And so, again, the only reason you will put down someone, the only reason you will denigrate, you will criticize, oppress someone, is if oftentimes you see them beneath yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how slavery began, was that you saw, the white man saw the black man as beneath him. Mm-hmm. And created an entire civilization based on that premise. Well, the same thing. If men see women as underneath them, so less value, if they see women as playthings, mm-hmm. if they see them as property, as chattel, as something that's way beneath them, then you're going to not treat them with the kind of dignity, worth, and value that they should have, or that God has placed on them. And so that's where a lot of this starts. We have to go back to the foundation. If we can understand the root, then we can change the root and make sure we could have the right roots, so we can produce the right fruit in our lives and in our families. Mm. And so a lot of this, the thing is this, the world is the world, and so you're going to still see a lot of this stuff and perversion and oppression of women in the world. But when it comes to people who call on the name of Christ, it should be completely different if we understand who we are and the way God sees women. So I want to start off by saying explain that?
Well, it is true, but I also, like yourself, I was. It almost seems like an outbreak of some kind of a disease or something. All of a sudden, you're hearing this one did this man did this. I think part of it too, and this was just my take on it. Not only the fact that how they see women, but it's more of power in the whole atmosphere. Because not only were women abused, young boys were also abused in the same setting. And if you look, it's always somebody of authority or somebody who has more money than somebody else that felt that dominance coming out, that they need to overtake, and I can do whatever I want. And especially back in those days, you pretty much got away with just about everything. So they did what they did. Know who you're going to complain to or who you talk to, because it was the boys' club, and the boys with the money in their pocket, so they can pretty much shut it down and, oh well, move on. But it's come to the time now where everybody can bring it back to the table and say, hey, you did this way back then, and I'm still hurting from it, and you need to pay up. A little bit of it, though, I'm wondering if all of this is actually factual. For the simple reason, just recently I have I have witnessed what sexual assault is. And it's really scary, because just for me to do this is a sexual assault. And I was like, really? So I have this thing hands off.
I got you. Yeah.
Right? Even in the schools, so you tend to wonder how much of this is real as opposed to how much of it is actual facts. Because if now that I see you becoming more prominent more than anybody else, and I don't like you, and I remember back in the day when you lay your hand on me, whether it's inappropriate or not, but the fact is the rules today says if you touch me without my permission, or you just put your hand on me and I didn't really say it's okay, I can now call sexual assault. So that's the other flip side to it for me, and I see a lot of it coming up, and I'm wondering, was it that bad? That nobody was paying attention, nobody saw this? No, I'm not.
But hold on, but you said, but the thing though, sorry to interrupt you, but the thing is, it's almost like moving the goalposts, is knowing, okay, well, if we just, I wanted to stop you there just to say then, because you talked about definition. What is the definition of sexual assault?
Right.
So then, and that's a kind of a challenging situation, because if someone did this in the terms of there was no negative intention.
Correct.
But it was just a mannerism.
Right.
Men have done that to male and female, across the board. And so if that was done, and that could be, that's seen now as the definition of sexual assault, whereas let's say 20 years ago, it was a different definition.
Right.
So I want to stop you there, because it's an interesting thing then. It's defining, well, what is sexual assault?
Correct.
And what are the varying degrees then?
Correct.
And it's not to minimize anything. We don't want to minimize.
No, absolutely not.
But it's to make sure that we're.
I will tell you a situation. I was working at this company, right? And the lady, I knew her. We were friends. We sang together in the same group practically, and she happened to be working in the same department, and she was probably having a bad day, right? And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" So I just simply said, "Hey, man, it's going to be okay. Don't touch me." I said, "Relax. If you touch me again, I'm going to report you for sexual assault." I'm like, "Whoa." I said, "Hold on a minute." I says, "We are friends, and I've touched you like this many times, and you never said that." I immediately, and this happened like over 20 years ago, and immediately I decided, you know what, this is where I draw the line. I'm staying away from you first of all, and I'm not touching anybody. Right? Because when that person said that, then I was like floored, because I'm thinking, you're angry for whatever reasons you're angry for, and I'm just pretty much trying to say, lighten up, it's okay, it's not a bad day as you think it is. And that was the flip of the switch.
Gotcha. But let me say this. Let's just, so that anyone listening, and all of our viewers don't think we're trying to minimize anything. So we can come back to that. Let's come back to that. But let's go back to this part here, is that, of course, when we see women right, so the thing is this, if we see that God created man and male and female in the class of himself, in the God class, which means both were created in his image, in his likeness, in his semblance, and so both are worthy of dignity, value, worth, and right treatment.
Absolutely.
And so that means then if we see women correctly, then our words towards them will be words of honor.
Correct.
Will be words of dignity, will be words of value. And so we won't be demeaning, we won't be oppressive.
Correct.
You see, so the thing is this, one scripture says, 1 Peter 3 verse 7, it says men ought to honor their wives as, not because they are, but as the weaker vessel and as being heirs together. So there's an area of also protection.
Correct.
Where because men will not use their strength in any way to hurt a woman. Why? Because of the way you see them.
Correct.
So you see them, again, as worthy. You see them as valuable. You see them worthy of dignity. And so, again, I started the program by saying everything starts by how we see someone.
Right.
If I see you the right way, I'm going to treat you right.
Correct.
So oftentimes, again, underscoring this, women have been treated very badly and oppressed over the generations because they were not seen correctly. Our vision of them has been wrong. And so, because that should never be the case in Christian circles. It has been, but it shouldn't be, because the only reason because we've had our minds haven't been renewed to think right about women. And so when we see women right, we will speak to them. Our words will be right. Our words will be will not carry any denigrating sexual connotations. They won't be objectified. They won't be put down. We won't be criticizing them in any way. Why? Because we see them right. And so all of that, again, we'll also see that if you look at so much revolves around, let's say, sexuality. Again, if women are only seen as sex objects. See, that's the picture. That's the framework with which they're seen oftentimes. So again, that's what leads to a lot of the perversion. That's what leads to a lot of the oppression. That's what leads to a lot of the denigration and the oppression of women. And so again, starts with our mindset. Right. So as men, just want to encourage men out there, we've got to look back at how are you seeing women? How are you... men won't be tempted to treat women wrong behind closed doors. In other words, we'll treat them the same way in private or in public the same way because we see them.
Correct.
Right. And so all of that is really, really important. But part of what's happened, I think why we're talking about it too and why it's interesting, I don't think anyone anticipated this all of a sudden.
Yes.
Like
it's true.
It's just
it's
all
true.
of a sudden,
it's just
there's been, a seed, a change. What is it? A seed change, or just completely different. It's just been all of a sudden men who were basically untouchable.
Yes.
Just all of a sudden. I mean, like in a moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
I'm thinking some of the guys now who did what they did back in the day, and I mean guys who really did stuff, are now shaking in the boots thinking, so who's going to come forward?
Yeah.
Who's going to come forward? Or some cases I heard, this I heard on radio, and I was like, he did not just say that. Wishing that all who he misses are all dead.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, are you really going to say that? What? You're wishing that they're dead? What a thing to say. I'm like, oh my goodness, he did not just say that. But the thing is though...
No, someone's going to call him and say, oh, by the way, I'm not dead.
I'm still alive. And I remember, But the thing is, going back to be talking about rebuilding the black family, and just before we continue that, somebody asked me today, because I played the ad today during my show, and I talked a little bit about, rebuilding the black family, and it says there's a twist in the name, rebuilding the black family. Would you like to explain, about a minute or so, why rebuilding the black family?
Okay, let me say this. I'm glad you asked. Because, people ask that question, and it's really interesting. I told you that I had dinner with a gentleman. He asked me to go out, my wife and I to go out to dinner with his wife. And he was a white male. He's a white person. And so he asked me that question. And I answered him, and he wasn't negative. He was, just wanted, by the way, as part of the conversation. And I said, I really feel, number one, God put that in my heart for years and years. I've had this name for at least 5 years, and I've had this desire to have this program. But then I said to him, there are some unique situations and challenges in the black family. that are specific and that are unique. Now, the solution to, let's say, to families, we could say the principles for building black family goes across racial barriers or boundaries. But there are some unique things that we would like to address, and so I really felt it's important to mention black. Now, let me say this also, though, if you don't mind. It's interesting how sometimes, and I'm not saying the person who said this, asked the question, is negative. I'm not saying that. I receive that and any questions as long as it's honest. But it's interesting now, why we say black is this. I know some people say this. Well, you know what? We're all human beings. And you know what? Color doesn't matter, and God doesn't see color. You know what? I used to think that. But you know what? I realized over time, and in my study of history, that is not true.
No.
Okay, so, and again, I'm not hung up. If you know me personally, you'll realize I'm one of the least unhung up person you will ever meet. You'll realize that I'm one of the one of the persons who is least divided by color. So in my background, I know people of all backgrounds. And so the thing is this. It's important, let me say this. Why is it, that I've been involved in different organizations, and one of them is, let's say, the Jewish organization.
Right.
Why is it that when Jews mentioned a Jewish cause, no one gets upset?
Yeah.
No one.
There's a reason for that. I can.
Now think about this now. Now the thing is this. No one will ever make the Jewish man forget. No one. The Jews will never let you forget.
Yeah.
Never. About the Holocaust. They'll never let you forget. And the thing is this. Are they wrong in highlighting that? No. Are they being necessarily divisive? No. They're addressing a specific need, and they want to make sure that the people that is a priority in their lives, that they're taken care of. And so let me say also why let me answer. I know this is not completely the answer, but let me just a few points.
Put it in.
Now, let me tell you another thing that put me over when we were about to launch the program, and I was just going to call it Rebuilding the Family. Talked to a good couple of friends of mine, and, even one good friend said, yeah, Carl, that seems, some people are going to think it's divisive. But, I was in a program. I was listening to the radio in February. I think it was the last year. And it was an interesting program I was listening to. And this young woman, the host was referring to, from Ethiopia. And this young woman, Claremont, said this. She was from Ethiopia, and where she comes from, there's different shades of black people. Now, from what she said, you could tell that she was of the darker shade.
Right.
And she said this, and the way she thought about it, she said, well, she wasn't pleased. She considers herself to be ugly. Now, when she was communicating again through this host or with this host, my question that it stayed with me all day. I even wrote something on it, a piece on it. Who told her she was ugly? I'm a thinker. Who told her? Well, see, my answer to that question was this. It had to be someone close to her.
Correct.
It had to be someone in authority. It had to be a relative, a mother, a father. If not that, an uncle, an aunt. You talked about why we call it Rebuilding the Black Family. It's because if we don't address certain things specifically, then we won't address certain answers. We won't be given the right solutions. We've got to answer some things. I know some people call it, make it uncomfortable when we say black, but we got to get over it. We're about affecting the black family because the black family is very, very important and in many cases has been decimated. Now, listen to me. When you really understand, see, most people, we don't really understand what slavery did. We don't. We think we do, but we don't. You need to understand, when I looked at some of the writings of the initial slave creators, if you will, slavery has been from time immemorial. Every race of man has had slaves. I understand that.
Correct.
But we're talking about the last 400 years. Let me go back to that. Hold that thought there. Going back to this woman, this young woman. Who told her that? And I thought, can you imagine a woman young woman, no more than 23, 24, very young, in her mindset, doesn't consider herself attractive for one reason.
Because she's black.
Because she's black. One reason. Think about that. Now, the thing was this, though. Why the black family? So, when you look at history then, I realize many of our young people, their understanding of history, Claremont, you know this, only goes back 300-400 years.
Correct.
Now, hear what I'm about to say. If that's the extent of your understanding of history, then think about this. It means then your vision, what you see of the black nation, I'm calling it, is that all they were was slaves.
Correct.
So why this program is very important, it's to be informational, educational, inspirational, is this. I realize women such as that, many people in North America of color, their understanding of their blackness only goes back 400 years, which is when predominantly much of the black family nation has been in slavery. They have such limited understanding of their real history as a people. They don't understand. They don't know they come. I did a video on this for Black History Month. We'll put it up in February. And so the thing is this: they don't know they come from a line of kings. They don't realize that they come from a nation of people who had the first kingdom on the planet. They don't understand that they had queens, their ancestors. They don't understand all of that. All their history is locked in on 400 years of slavery, and that their parents and their parents' parents were slaves. So think about this now. No wonder then, why do we call Africa the Dark Continent? Why was it called the Dark Continent? Again, that was training by the white man, and again, please understand, half of my friends are white. So understand thing is this. Now, it was training, though. Please understand, it was training to train you, to get you to think your continent, the continent you came from, and the continent we could say where life began. Think about this now, that your people, your inheritance, your ancestors were ignorant, backwards, unintelligent, and only needed white man's help. Why is it that most black people wouldn't go back home? Despise where they come from, whether it's from the Caribbean, whether it's from India, whether it's from Jamaica, Caribbean, wherever. See, now, in the original writings of the slave owners, British slave owners, 300 years ago, you know what they actually said? We want to be able to predict the behavior of the black man for the next 300 years.
Wow.
They almost just about did it. So the thing is this, when we get strong on this is this. Now think about this. This is one of the reasons one of the conclusions I wrote on when listening to this woman. I realized this. Part of what slavery did, you got to understand there was an ingenious motive about it, is that they got inbuilt inside the black man, what they wanted to do was this, is to get you to hate yourself. If you hate yourself, remember, by hating your color, then guess what? If you hate yourself, you'll hate anyone who looks like you. I no longer have to worry about defeating you or destroying you. You'll destroy yourself.
Exactly.
You see that? So this color thing, it's bigger than we think. It's bigger than we imagine. Now think about this now. Even in the Bible now, think about this. Men even use, you can understand, when you hear me say North America has never been a Christian nation. Never. Now, I know that might upset some people, but too bad, I can prove it to you. Never. Now, my conclusion, I might have said that last week, but I never said why.
Yeah, no.
Because to be a Christian nation, it means your government must be a Christian government. Now, remember, you might have had a lot of very good Christians, don't get me wrong.
In the government. But
in government and in the nation, particularly.
Yeah.
But a Christian government must mean that all of its let's say its governing officials, its governing documents, the principles by which the nation is ruled replicate exactly the kingdom of heaven.
Correct.
Can anyone prove that it is? No. Now, how do we know that? The U.S. Constitution was never written for the black man. Can anyone...
Even the national anthem tells you that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we're saying when we talk about, I hope that's enough. I hope that answers a little bit enough.
Yeah.
The thing is this. So what we want to address here is this. Now, we understand if, and again, people can be intermarried. You might be a white person listening in color. Please understand, I don't judge people by the color of their skin. Please understand that. I've never taught my children to judge someone by the color of their skin. I've not told them they have to marry a black man. Why? Because I don't want them to just go by that criteria.
Right.
I have a higher standard than their color. However, I would be amiss if I didn't say this, and if we didn't address this area, that much of our North American culture, much of the Western world, was built on the premise of white supremacy and racism.
Absolutely correct.
You see what? So that's part of why we have to address some of these things. Oh, by the way, you know what it says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28? It's amazing scripture. It says, there in Christ, there's neither, think about this, Jew nor Greek.
There you go.
That's race.
Yeah.
There's neither bond or free. That's class. There's neither male nor female. Sex.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So the thing is, why would it put it in there like that? Because what was supposed to happen when people got born again and came into the local church, the body, one of the main principles that was supposed to be baptized in or indoctrinated in is this. You come into the doors of the church now, no matter what your class was, no matter what your color was, no matter what your sex was, you leave that at the door. Listen, you've got a new mindset. You're under a different kingdom. You see that?
Yeah.
So that's why we've never been really schooled in North America with this right thinking.
Right.
So that means there's a whole lot of Christians, they live strictly based on color.
Exactly.
You see that?
Exactly.
And so that's why now much of what you've been seeing in the United States and some in Canada also, a lot of that is Christians who are, I'm not saying they don't know Jesus, but the fact is this, much of their mentality, much of their lifestyle is governed by their color. See that? So it's privilege by color or oppression by color. So the thing is this. So now, part of what we want to do is this. For the black family to be restored, we've got to have a certain thinking about ourselves. We've got to think right about ourselves. We can't be, it's almost like we've got to change the programming where we realize, you know what, let me put it another way. If you think that because I'm black, I'm supposed to be under, and you got to understand that some stuff is generational, and it keeps being perpetuated. Okay, so I'm supposed to be poor. I'll never be able to do certain things. And I know some of us have come up above a lot of that. But the thing is this, so many of our people are not living the way they're supposed to be living because this slavery mindset has still captured so many of our population and so many of our people, and we've got to change that. And then also we have to realize this, much of the systems, I'll say this in quick, much of the systems that we're battling, you're going to understand, it's functioning under that premise of oppression. So we've got to be careful about it. But go ahead.
You know, I was listening to you, and I remember something that my mom used to say when we were younger, divide and conquer, right? Is the greatest strategy that the enemy has used on the nations of people, God's people, is to divide ourselves so that he can conquer us and control everything that we do. Because, I mean, it talked about the fact that when the people were building the Tower of Babel, and God says, if these people have one mind, there's nothing stopping them. So if I don't confuse them now, they'll build this thing. And the enemy knows the best trick ever. Divide the nations. Make them see themselves as different and whatever, and therefore I can conquer them, not only in the physical but also in the spiritual. And pretty much when my mom used to use that amount, you know, saying people rule, divide and conquer, you never recognize that the enemy is also using it worldwide, nationwide, and it's messing up everybody today. I mean, I could talk about so many incidents that has when people say, well, who cares? Nobody's worrying about your color. Nobody cares about that. I'm like, that's because you're lighter than I am, or you're of a different nation than I am. That's what don't matter to you. But you and I walk into the same store together, and you'll find out I mean, look at it this way. I had to be around 12, 13 years old, probably 14. If you see my mother, she looks pretty much like Indian, right? And she's part Amerindian. And looking at me, you don't see that at all, right? I look like a straight up Negro. Straight up Negro like my papa, right? So we went to this store. This is home in Guyana. And my mom was a seamstress. Excellent seamstress, by the way. Sorry I didn't pick up the trade, but it would have been a great thing knowing how to sew it properly.
Along with the knitting.
Along with the knitting, yeah, it's true. But my mom went to this place, I remember downtown Georgetown, to buy cloth because she was making some clothes for some people. And we were in the store, and I was, going to a store where there's cloth and all these women, a young man, like, well, I don't want to be in it. My friends passing me in this woman thing, they're going to be taunting me and so forth. So I stayed at the back of the store. And my mom had her hair tied up, and from the sides of her hair so straight, she looks full Indian, right? And the owner of the store was an Indian man, and he said to my mom, "Be careful of the little black boy behind you. He might want to snatch your purse." And my mom looked back. And all she saw was me, so she didn't think nothing of it. She just thought that whoever was somebody else, right? Yeah. So, but she had got some of the cloth in the bag, and she put it on the ground. I never forget this. This is something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. So, as she would move to different areas,
you were following.
I was following her, and I would push the bag up. With my foot pushing the bag up, I'm just following her. Just not too close, but far enough, because I know she has to come back to the front anywhere where the thing is. But I didn't feel like lifting the bag. She had already bought enough cloth, and she got groceries in the bag already. Like, Mom, let's go, because I got to carry this thing home, Anyways, nevertheless, moving forward, we got up to the counter now. And I walked up behind her now with the bag. And the man, "What do you want? Get out of here." Oh, so wait a minute. The little black boy, my son? So he's now looking at her totally confused, like, you don't look like, My mom he'd already cut the cloth and everything. My mom just dropped everything, says, "Deal with that," and walked to come, son, let's go. And I thought, could he not see, you see, innocence of me, not thinking anything along that way, but we instill this in our children, right? And my mom never taught us to be prejudiced against anybody or anyone, right? She says, you are who you are, and God put you down here just as you are, and you have a purpose, right? Whether you sweep the streets, or whether you operate on a man, or whether you fly a plane, or whether you drive a car, whatever you do, you're here for a purpose. So my mom taught us that. So she just walked out, but I couldn't understand why he couldn't see. But as I got old, I recognized, because my mom here was straight, mine wasn't. Mine was kink. But her hair, especially if you grease it down, man, she looked like full, as we say. Excuse me, folks, for saying this, but for those of you West Indians, we say full coolie back home, right? Which means Indian, right? So, but the thing is, she looks just like that. Especially she slicks her hair down and she ties her hair back. I mean, to put that hair tie on, my mama looked like the other side. And then there's other times when you could look and think, hey, she's mixed with somebody. But, but that's what happened. And, for someone to tell me that, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing, especially with the thing Black Lives Matter. Of course our lives, and they said, well, everybody's lives matter. No. Don't get it twisted. Our lives matter. And you got to understand there's a
that was changing the channel, by the way.
Yeah.
See, you didn't, instead of looking at an issue, you changed the channel.
You just don't want to deal with it.
Change the conversation. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because, the thing is, it's like, I try to stay away from certain things. I was going to get involved in the Black Lives Matter, but I just didn't want to deal with all the other political side of things. So I stay away from this. That's not my fight. We'll pray. But the thing is, when you look and you see folks talking about, well, what are you guys fighting about? Okay. How long were the Jews locked up for or being treated? 6 years, something like that? 6, 7 years. And over how many millions of Jews were killed?
Yep, six plus.
Right.
Oh, by the way, in addition to that, there were other people killed. There were non-Jews.
Non-Jews that were killed.
So blacks who were killed. Also those with, let's say, different orientation, sexual orientation. So it's about 9 to 11 million people were killed.
But 6 million were
Jews. 6-7 million were Jews. But what I'm saying, even though a couple million of other people were killed, the Jews have made sure that they've kept that voice very loud.
Very loud.
See that?
Okay, so I'm looking at this. 6 years, 6 million Jews, 375 years, I think it was, that we were in slavery in North America. It was a little longer in the West Indies, right? And you put that
It's
together.
a bit less than that, because if you look at it, it's about 250 years. But if you look at if you go back a little bit, so 250, 300, then if you look at the actual emancipation,
Yes,
you know, it was
yes.
1800. But, and then different laws and different civil rights and all that. Go ahead.
You looked at that, and we're not going back there again. And like, what are you guys quarreling about? What are you guys fussing about? You know, and we have to literally deal with this situation. So I actually explained rebuilding the black family was what it all meant. But I just wanted you to say, because I know they're listening right now.
That's right. You know what? And if there's anything specific, I don't mind you, our viewers, listeners, please, write us if there's something very specific you'd like us to address.
Yeah.
This is very, very, let me say something. You said something about your story. You have some great life stories.
Listen, when I go back to my life stories, and I'm thinking, I have no stories. My children said to me, Dad, you could make a great grandfather.
Yeah, you like all these stories. But think what you said, though. Sorry to interrupt you, but I thought about a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
When you were saying that. See, oftentimes we don't know. There were some things that can mark you for life.
Yeah, it did.
So can you imagine, like a 12-year-old, you realize very early how different people are treated based on one thing. Now, think about this now. When people say, well, God doesn't see color. Well, why would he make different colors?
Of course he does.
So he makes different colors. Now think about this. Why? Because God, he loves the diversity of color, right? He loves the beauty of color. The thing is this, though, it was never supposed to be made what we've made.
Made it today, exactly.
It was never supposed to be something that's a dividing issue.
Exactly.
So that's why we say that shouldn't be the determination of character.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be the determination of, let's say, why you put one person above another. That was never supposed. It's supposed to be really an expression of diversity, but also really an expression of beauty and an expression of the creativity of God that he says in was it Acts 17:26 is made of one blood, all man.
I want to say good afternoon to all the folks that are locked in this evening. It's great to have you guys on board.
Thank you
so much for locking in. But as I was saying before, we can't just sweep this under the carpet and think it's okay, right? I would go in for a job. The interesting thing is, even now I think you call it reverse racism. I might be wrong. In the sense, among ourselves now.
Okay.
Because I have locks.
Oh, I see.
Right? I walk into an area with my own kind, my own nation, my own black folk, and they will all discriminate against me because I have locks.
Yeah.
Don't know me, don't know anything about me, and you got this look. So I remember...
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to bring something else up.
I remember saying to this one woman, why would you have locks in your hair? So I looked at her and I'm thinking, this is my own hair. But when I look in your head, you don't have your own hair on. And why are you using that as opposed to your own hair? Are you ashamed of yourself? Are you ashamed of your hair? I said, so the time you take to discriminate against me, you don't know nothing about me, but you're just associating locks with ganja, marijuana, drugs, and all that kind of stuff. You don't know anything about me. As a matter of fact, go back in history, you'll see pictures of where some of the great kings, the Ethiopian kings, had locks.
Now, think about what you just said there. So part of why you're getting back, answering that original question, that I'm going back to that question, but also to this woman, the young girl.
Right.
So now here's a woman. Don't you think her quality of life is going to be severely determined by how she thinks about herself?
Right.
So if she thinks negatively about herself, it can, I'm not saying it will, but, definitively, but it can impact how she performs at school.
Correct.
It can impact her relationships. Why? Because then she's seeing herself as less than.
Right.
Then, even perspective, think about perspective then. If she sees herself, as ugly, then who is she seeing as beautiful? Who then becomes her role model?
Correct.
People of lighter color. See that now? Let me say another thing too. The other thing we did, you understand what's happened. If we think in terms of beauty then, just so beauty for the black woman is based on shade. Don't tell me it's not affecting people. So why this is important is that we have to instill in our young girls, that's what we try to do, is that you've got to be comfortable in your own skin.
Yes, right.
You know, you've got to know, well, how do you dress? What makes you look beautiful and feel right and good and healthy about it? Let me say another thing, too, because this came to thought when you were talking about your dreadlocks. Because the thing is this, when that woman saw you, I don't think it was just the dreadlocks. It was the fact that you're a black man with dreadlocks.
Exactly.
You see, so let me say how this goes too. Just like how, let's say, beauty and the way we see ourselves. The thing is this: why is it that we question the character of one another negatively in a way we wouldn't?
Question another. Yeah.
You see that?
Yes.
So that means, I'm saying we're talking about rebuilding the black family, because part of rebuilding the black family means rebuilding how we think about one another.
Exactly.
And so think about this. Oftentimes, black people, instead of catering to the business of their own fellow black people, will think about this, automatically go to a white person's store or a lighter person's store. Think about this now.
We treated better.
Because they're thinking now, you know what? The black man's going to cheat me. The white man is not.
No.
Now think about this now. We're talking about, so this programming, we're talking about this inner programming, and I don't want to talk about these things personally, but I realize you have to.
Yeah, you do.
So this inner programming, so you see, so this inner programming that's working to undermine not just your life, not just your family, but the community of black family. Do you see that? Yeah. So then, now understand this. I'm all about the greater good of humankind. Whether you're white, brown, Indian, Chinese, whatever, the greater good. But if the black nation is deficient, then it's going to take away from the greater family.
Exactly.
So that's another reason why we're addressing the black family. Why? Because if the black family is deficient, if we don't fulfill our greatest potential, then we're going to rob all of mankind. So some of this is going to be uncomfortable. But the fact is this, we got to, in a sense, become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And some of these things we're not going to want to address. But the fact, when you see it, let me tell you right now, slavery was one of the worst institutions ever. When you see the wickedness of it, if we talk about something I don't want to say on air, because it's so revolting of what was done during that period. And some of those things that are still being done, not necessarily physically, but economically. I mean, look, in housing, in social programs. When we look at all these things and we're honest, a lot of this stuff is going under the radar because, understand, for the system to work, you need to understand this. For the system to work, you need to have a good percentage of people of color doing good in the system. You don't understand? That's why this stuff is going on.
Yeah.
So then the thing is this. In so one sense, we can sell out the greater community because we're okay. And so we won't necessarily keep pressing on to realize, listen, the mentality should be, until we see the black nation fully restored, fully optimized, then we're not satisfied with our own prosperity.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And I think of it, when I've done some studies about America, when you realize what's going on down there, you realize there's in the system, there's voter oppression.
Yes.
Let me use an example.
Yes.
So think about this now. Think about this. The legalized, oppression, the legalized oppression of the black vote to keep poor people from voting. So just think about that. Legalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
But most of that goes under the radar.
Nobody cares.
No one talks about it. No one cares. Why? Because, see, now think about this now. And some of that, we enable it because why? We're okay.
Yeah.
We've got a nice home. We've got a nice car. We get to go on vacation. You see what? But the thing is this. Part of what Jesus, didn't Jesus say this in part of his platform? First thing he said, Luke 4:18. Think about this. He had 6 platforms in his campaign, if you will. Luke 4:18 says, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because he's anointed me to preach the gospel to who? The poor. Think about this. Paul said this, only be mindful. Well, the first apostles, James and Peter, when they at the council in Acts 15, said, only be mindful to remember the poor.
The poor.
Paul said that. Remember the poor. Now, I'm big on personal responsibility. I was more extreme on that side. But I started realizing, no, to be more balanced and holistic, we need to realize how we treat the poor is very important to God. And any nation, any people that oppresses the poor, that legalize the oppression of poor people, are in trouble with God. So let me get back. We started about this woman thing. Can I get back to this woman?
Just before you get out,
Yes.
I want to respond to Lennox.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we almost done.
We'll continue. We'll continue. You guys have pushed me over the edge now.
Listen, I just don't want to get too excited myself. I'm letting you take all of that. Just go there. But I want to respond to Lennox. Lennox, thank you so much for locking in. And you wanted to know who this gentleman is that is next to me. This is Pastor Carl Lewis from Foundation
For
Life
Family Church.
Family Church.
And Foundation for Life Christian
some of these guys know me from way back when.
good.
And so they're trying to figure out who's the gentleman.
Who is this? Who is that man?
Oh, no.
Who's that villain?
He's not a villain, man. He's just speaking my heart, and I thank God for joining him, for being able to share the passions, and we have like passions, especially when it comes to our nation of people. And there's nothing wrong, because everybody else is concerned about their nation of people. And as soon as we speak, somebody's like, oh, why do you have to go there? Like, but you do the same.
Well, now think about this now. If we realize, you realize after slavery, again, if we study some of this stuff, it's right there.
Yeah.
You realize what they did? They instituted, we have big prisons in North America full predominantly of black people. Why? When you realize, think about this. After they said they outlawed slavery, one of the first things they did was this. They imprisoned black men almost for no reason.
Yeah.
For no reason. Think about this. So we're talking about at the inception of your prison system.
There's a gentleman, it was going around on Facebook, this white guy, and he says, I'm passionate about this, and I'll try to see if I can find it, and he said, I'm passionate about this because I see the injustice of our nation towards the black race. He said, because myself and my buddy, he's black, he says, we're like blood brothers. He says, he's black. He did something that in front of a white officer, and the white officer literally turned his face. So his buddy went up and did the same thing, right? And he was immediately arrested, thrown against the wall, and he ran. He said, "Whoa, hold on a second. We got cameras here watching this, showing you the difference. I just did the same thing. You did nothing." And the cop got upset. Like, what are you doing? You're white, and da-da-da-da. He said, it doesn't matter. I did the exact same thing as my buddy. And he says, there's a camera there, there's a camera. He started pointing the cameras out that across the street that is filming this. And he almost said he's going to charge everybody because, he said, no, we have legal rights to do this, right? But at this point in time, he was feeling embarrassed for his actions because his inner self, his true inner self came out.
Yeah. That programming. See, the inner programming. Started hundreds of years of programming passed on to him. We got to go. But let me say this. We started by women when we but the thing is this. As men, black men, we better know, we better dignify our women. We better see them and treat them with a value. That's why I can't listen to a lot of music that denigrates women. See that? So we got to treat them right, treat them with great honor. So this week, that woman in your life, girlfriend, wife, whoever that woman is, your mother, your siblings, sisters, treat them with dignity. Let them know they're valuable, they're beautiful, they're precious. Like us on Facebook, follow us, and until next time.
Hold on, just before we go.
Yes.
Next week, Tuesday, is going to be Boxing Day.
Okay.
So we're not sure if we're going to be here or not.
Okay. I don't know. What are you going to do? You might be free.
I'll see
about it. I don't know. But that's a big sacrifice. But we're going to try to be here. We might do a Boxing Day program.
You never know. But in the meantime, we want to say to all of our listeners, thank you so much for locking in for the last 6 months, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah, last 6 months. And have yourself a great Christmas time. And I know it's all about the food for some of us, like myself.
Yeah, have a wonderful Christmas holiday with your family. We really appreciate you, and thank you, Claremont.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful Christmas. And
something to keep in mind that a lot of people don't know. For some reason, we've been tracking this a long time ago, and I'm going to do this in 3 seconds. December is December is a time when there's a lot of unnatural stuff happen in the spirit realm in terms of death and sickness and so forth. So be careful. Keep in prayer. God bless you. Until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you for joining us today on Rebuilding the Black Family with Pastor Carl Lewis and myself, Claremont Humphrey.
We trust you found this program helpful. Please give us your feedback on our Facebook page, Foundation for Life Church. Also, visit us at foundationforlife.ca, where you will find some free life-building resources. Join us next time for another edition of Rebuilding the Black Family. Until then, build your life and family on the sure foundation of Jesus Christ.